first to the future in a place called The Matrix.
You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind.
Well, for anyone who liked the Wachowski brothers' previous film, Bound, prepare for a gigantic leap into the future with The Matrix. This is a special effects action film with a clever sci-fi premise that offers huge dollops of adrenaline-pumping tension. Keanu Reeves stars as Thomas Anderson, aka Neo, a computer programmer who's being sought by the mysterious Morpheus, Laurence Fishburne, via a woman called Trinity, Carrie-Anne Moss. But men who look awfully like special branch agents are on the trail of Trinity and Morpheus, and they know the key is Neo. They're led by the coldly vile Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving. When Neo finally gets to meet Morpheus, he discovers more is expected of him than he would ever dream.
Free my mind. So what if he makes it?
No one's ever made the first jump.
I know. But what if he does?
He won't.
Come on.
Right. No problem. Free my mind. Free my mind. No problem. Right.
The Matrix was shot in Sydney last year, and it gives a mild thrill to recognise some of the locations in the film. But you get a grand thrill from the action heart of the movie, choreographed by Hong Kong Kung Fu master Yuen Wu Ping. And some of the special effects are stunningly effective. The story is conceptually a challenge, but the Wachowskis managed to delineate their double realities very skillfully. Keanu Reeves is terrific as Neo, as is Hugo Weaving as his nemesis. Carrie-Anne Moss makes an attractive and active heroine. I found The Matrix more interesting than a lot of other action films because the plot wasn't laid out simplistically just so the bad guys could get their comeuppance from the goodies. David?
Oh, yeah, but it's so convoluted, isn't it, Margaret?
Well, not that much.
Well, I think it is. I mean, I think this is a film aimed at computer game nerds, and I think they would sort of...
Thank you very much.
Well, I think they'll lock onto it immediately. I really found it very difficult working out what was going on here. But it doesn't matter that much, I don't think, because the special effects and the visual look of the film are so exciting. I don't think any of the actors are going to win any prizes, though, do you?
Well, I thought actually a lot of them were terrific. But you see, I felt the same way about this as I did about the original Terminator, which is really just an action film as well. But
I think that's a lot better than this, though.
Well, no, there's very similar premises.
Well,
very similar to Dark City as well.
Dark City it is similar to, and I found that rather dense plot-wise as well. But again, a wonderful visual look. And it's interesting, this combination of scrungy settings. I mean, the location manager must have found every garbage-strewn back alley in Sydney, I think.
That's what I liked.
Well, yeah, that's nice. And it's also interesting the Hong Kong influence on American films these days. But, look, there's a lot going for The Matrix. As I wish I'd understood it. I'll give it 3.5.
Oh, well, I understood it. I'm going to give it 4.
Trinity.
Yeah, great visual effects. Legendary action film mogul Joel Silver, the Australian co-producer Andrew Mason, and Hugo Weaving talk to us about The Matrix.
Joel Silver had bought this script from the Wachowskis 5 years ago, or maybe 6 years ago now, and he'd at the time been doing some other things with them. They wrote Assassins that he was involved with. He liked the script. I don't think anybody else at Warner Brothers liked it all that much, but he, being Joel, got to have his way.
They conceived of the movie in a fashion that was pretty unique, and what they always wanted to do was this. I mean, Matrix was what they wanted to do, and when they wrote that, and they said, we want to direct this, I said, well, you know, it may take a while, but let's see what we can do. And they went off and did Bound, almost as a I guess as an audition tape to show that they knew what they were doing. And that was enough for the studio to say, you know, let's take a shot.
He helped convince Keanu that Keanu should be in on the act. And that gives it a certain, once you get to that point, it has a certain gravity and it's going to start attracting everything else. You know, the writers, the directors, the star, the producer, it's all happening. Except that what the Wachowskis wanted to do with it was way too expensive to do in the States, and it ground to a halt. At which point, somebody I know introduced me to the Wachowskis, and I said, you've got to come down. I know you can do this in Australia and it will work just fine. And I sort of got them to come out here, and, you know, as they jokingly continued to say, I convinced them it was the filmmaking paradise of the world.
So what do you need? Guns. Lots of guns.
No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
Were the special effects done in America?
The Wachowskis already had a relationship with a visual effects supervisor, whose name's John Gator, from a company in San Francisco. So that company stayed involved, but 2/3 of the work ended up here with D-Film and Animal Logic.
Normally, if you're working with a director, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know. It's not expressed because there's stuff going on inside a director's mind. But with these two guys, they have a dialogue that's running, and so you're kind of finding out the stuff that's normally inside a director's mind is actually being expressed between the two of them, and so it's quite fascinating, really. But they're big kids. They make a lot of sound effects, you know, go through scenes and always in unison. They're very amusing.
I like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here.
I didn't want him to sound robotic, and I didn't want him to sound human, so it was just finding some... So I kind of hit on this idea of maybe he was like a 50s newsreader or something.
Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
It was a lot of fun being able to enjoy the villain, and the fact that they always enjoyed the villain too made it an enjoyable experience. The other side of it was the kung fu, and that was incredibly hard. We trained for, I think, 4 or 5 months before we started shooting, doing, you know, full-on kung fu with 8 or 9 Hong Kong kung fu choreographers and stars. That was very, very difficult. Full-on 9 to 5 every day for that amount of time. Plus, then during the shoot, we actually had to do those fights ourselves. And this is us up there doing these kung fu. It's not like stunt guys doing it. So it was physically really demanding.
He's not going to make it. Gotcha.
Keanu's I found I was very surprised when I met him how genuinely sweet a person he is, and how smart he is, and how well read he is. And now this is something that most people go on, you know, they have all sorts of ideas about Keanu, but he's a highly intelligent, very well read, astute, very good listener, you know, and all these things that hit me quite suddenly and in this kind of very self-deprecating character as well.
Trinity! Help!
Doing The Matrix 2 is something that it's the sort of film that I would never imagine myself being involved in either, and kind of deciding to do that because ostensibly because of Larry and Andy and the sort of people they are and the sort of script they wrote, and that they were very interested in me. By sort of saying, yes, I'll do this, even though it's not really the sort of film I love doing, I kind of opened another door for myself. So, I mean, I don't mean in terms of what I will be doing in the future. I just mean in terms of my experience. So it was, so doing that was fantastic.